Okay, just immediately. So probably it's better when we start, otherwise.
Okay, so let's start. Uli is still. Martina, please try to contact Uli and try to send the new link to Uli while we started, okay? Okay, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, let me first thank the associations that helped to organize this webinar, such as JETA, Gender and Talents, Observatory on Gender Equality, CRACE, Center of European Research on Sustainable Innovations, and Marie Curie Alumni Association Italy chapter. And I would like to thank Women20 and ETWIN, Italian Women Innovators and Inventors Network, for giving the patronage. I'd like to thank also Elvira Marasco, W20 Italy Head of Delegation 2021, for first involving me in W20 Engagement Group, first as Head of Delegation of W20 Italy in Japan 2019, and then the W20 Italy Delegate in Saudi Arabia 2020 and Italy 2021. It was a real challenge for me to be in touch with all international delegates, which I thank for their participation today to the webinar. And each one brings its own expertise from which we learned a lot. Today is my pleasure. Before starting with the webinar, let me give the floor to Francesca Gripaudo, ETWIN President, which pushed me to organize this webinar, and want to give the welcome address in the name of the association who helped at the organization of the webinar. Francesca Gripaudo, the floor is yours.
Buongiorno a tutte, sono Francesca Romana Gripaudo, la presidentessa di Twin, ed è con me un vero piacere.
No, sorry, Francesca, in English, please.
Okay, don't worry, because this is I'm Francesca Gripaudo, president of the Italian organization of women inventors and innovators, and for me it's a real pleasure to host you, to listen to what this big group of very valuable women have proposed to our leader in occasion of the Women20 works. So when Gianna asked me to organize this meeting today, I was very happy, because you know that one of the main goals of the Italian Women Innovators and Inventors Association is to promote the STEM, the participation of talent women in the creativity world. It's and in the field of innovation, especially. And unfortunately, up until today, it's still a very, very men-ruled world. So it's very difficult for women to find their place. They have to fight, and I hope that your advice can help us to ease this very long pathway, to have at least the same that our male colleagues have. So it's with a real pleasure that I'm giving the speech back to Gianna. So, and I'm very interested in listening your proposal. Thank you to all of you for being with us today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Francesca. Today is my pleasure to introduce this webinar on women empowerment in Women20. The aim of the webinar is, first of all, to disseminate the work done by Women20 in 2021, and then to reflect on how much this recommendation has been adopted by G20. We need to monitor and make sure that the recommendation will be applied. It will be important for the areas that are left out or least affected to be taken up by us in future communique next W20 Indonesia 2022, so as to increase the pressure of the civil society to improve progress in G20 declaration and the roadmap. What is the roadmap? An important result achieved with the declaration of the leader of G20 is the G20 roadmap towards and beyond the Brisbane target to reduce the gap in labor force participation rates between men and women of 25% by 2025, with the aim of bringing 100 million women into the labor market, increasing global and inclusive growth and reducing poverty and inequality. This year, the Italian presidency underlined a new challenging vision, from inclusion to empowerment of women. People are all over the planet at the epicenter of three epochal processes: the pandemic crisis, the climate crisis, and the technological revolution. This will have a considerable social, economic, and environmental impact for many years to come. So we call for G20 leaders to move from an inclusion to empowerment of women's strategies, policies, and actions, considering that women are not a disadvantaged category, but half of the world. As you can see from the agenda, we broaden the G20 traditional legacy topics that are entrepreneurship and finance, labor and digital, to two new pioneering topics: violence against women and girls and environmental sustainability, and added the two more strategical cross-cutting topics: health, gender medicine, and cultural change and gender stereotypes. I will give the floor to Martina Rogato, Sherpa of W20 Italy 2021, to introduce to the public the G20 engagement group on gender equality, that is Women20. And then each working group of Women20 will have the opportunity to explain the recommendations and briefly comment on how they have been adopted on Leaders Declaration of G20 and in the roadmap more specifically. This working group reflects the main topics, the focus area on which W20 has been working during 2021, which I mentioned before. In total, we have 7 focus areas, each undertaken by each working group. After a brief introduction of W20 Indonesia 2022, there will be the conclusion by the chair of W20 Italy 2021, Linda Laura Sabatini, which will illustrate the important results achieved in the Leaders Declaration and Roadmap of G20. In general, we can consider ourselves very satisfied by this result. Let's start. Martina Rogato, Sherpa of W20 Italy 2021. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gianna, and thanks so much to eTwin and CNR and President Francesca Cripauto for arranging this outstanding webinar and giving us the opportunity of reporting to Italian Association together with the W20 key stakeholders, the W20 2021 presidency. It's very nice to see you there after Christmas time, hopefully to meet you in person this year in Indonesia and very soon. So the W20 is one of the 8 official engagement group of the G20. We know that this year Indonesia is improving the number of engagement groups, and we are very happy of it, but we remain also this year the only let's say vertical engagement group focused on gender equality and women empowerment. As mentioned by Gianna, this year, the last year actually, has been focused on 7 main areas. The yellow one, entrepreneurship, finance, digital, and labor, are the, let's say, legacy of the W20. And together we decided to add 2 new topics. One is violence against women. That is not really a new topic, but has been moved as a main priority of the W20 for the first time in 2021. And last but not least, we decided to focus our attention also on environmental sustainability, considering that the Italian G20 decided to stay focused on 3 main pillars: people, planet, and prosperity. And last but not least, we decided to create 2 focused commissions, one addressed to health, equity in health and gender medicine, and a second one focused on cultural changes and gender stereotypes. So the whole W20 decided to work in order to create and deliver a communique, so a set of policy recommendations to G20 leaders focused on these 7 areas in order to recommend on how to intervene to achieve gender equality. How our path started. We started 1 year ago consulting in Italy, more than 100 associations focusing on gender equality. And obviously, we also valorize the internal expertise we have with eTwin and CNR with Gianna and Sveva. And listening, engaging all of these key associations, we identified a set of macro areas in all of these focused key priorities. 10, we had 1 year of discussion and negotiations among G20 countries with all of our W20 delegates. Today we are 102 delegates inside the W20. And in July, we delivered our set of recommendations. To achieve this goal of engaging, listening our delegates, and let's say represent 20 countries, we had the opportunity of creating 5 working groups led by our delegates, 1 for each key strategic area of the W20, so entrepreneurship and labor, managed by Virginia and Anna Maria. Entrepreneurship and finance, led by Virginia and Anna Maria, then digital, led by Cheryl and Gianna, labor, led by Mabel and Elvira, violence against women and girls, led by Pam and Francesca, and last but not least, environmental sustainability, led by Narnia and Sveva. They were very precious for us, really, to finalize the W20, and I'm taking thanks all of them for this. And then we create 2 extra commissions, one on health led by Professor Flavia Franconi, one on cultural changes led by Fabiana Giacomotti. Over the whole year, we had a very strong advocacy strategies. In particular, we always had a very strong and direct dialogue with the G20 Sherpa office, together with all G20 strategic working groups working on these areas in order to create the Leaders Declaration. And we also had, let's say, bi-monthly meeting with other engagement groups like the Civil 20, the Labor 20, in order to align our strategies. And in order to, let's say, create our content together to support our advocacy strategy, it has been very important and also fundamental to have, let's say, knowledge partners among international organizations, very useful to support the whole here. We had the chance of having the OECD, the GWEP, the HILO, the ITC, the ITU, UN Women, UNICEF, international organization focusing on all of our key strategic areas. And hopefully also this year they will be very important for the W20 development. You can read our W20 communique in our official website of the W20. Then we know that the Toronto University is collecting since 2015 all W20 communiques. So also when the Indonesian colleague will deliver their new website, you can, let's say, check and monitor all the previous years of communique, and you can read the G20 Leaders Declaration in our communique. Now I will give the floor back to Gianna Bellis, and I thank you so much for your attention, and I remain at your disposal for any eventual question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Martina. And let's continue with the working groups. The first one is the working group on women entrepreneurship and finance. Women entrepreneurship has not generally been viewed as a strategic resource that can serve as a major growth engine for the economy. To promote women entrepreneur full participation in the economy and serve as a source of significant job creation, government should invest in fair and equal recovery plan with a gender equality perspective. Anna Maria Tartaglia, W20 Italy delegate, and Virginia Littlejohn, W20 co-head of delegation of United States. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gianna. Hi, Virginia. I will share the slides so we can start, okay? Virginia, would you like to start?
Yes, we had a big challenge this year because we had two very important issues and we had to combine them. Fortunately, we were given a few extra issues that we could address since we were dealing with two big ones. But women have been hit harder than men in the pandemic crisis, particularly women entrepreneurs. So we felt that G20 members had to develop a strategic policy to reinforce and relaunch female entrepreneurship to impact jobs, drive innovation, reduce inequalities, and include sectors impacted by the pandemic and climate change. Next slide. Specific recommendations: ensuring equal rights to ownership of assets and removing barriers to financial inclusion for all women. That included several key items: legislating for equal rights for women to finance and investment, ownership of land and assets, inheritance rights, pension and insurance, mobile and cryptocurrency bank accounts, and devices for access to these assets, including financial independence and self-sufficiency. The next area, oh, sorry, Anna Maria.
Okay, so what we did was for each chapter to underline what were adopted by the Leaders Declaration and then what was adopted inside the roadmap. As you can see for this part in the Article 43 of the Leaders Declaration, they recognize the importance of sound, predictable, and transparent domestic regulatory frameworks for trade, service, and investment. Underscoring the importance of the fair competition, and they declare that they will continue to work to ensure the level playing field to foster a favorable trade and investment environment. In terms of what was adopted inside the G20 roadmap, say that the participation of women, it's true that is not specifically for entrepreneurs, but global. We can integrate this inside our part. Like for labor, is that in the labor market, we need an improvement of the quality of the employment. And this is true also for the part of the entrepreneurs. Also, as Virginia before said, and it was received, is to improve the access to all women to a comprehensive social protection benefit. And you know that for the entrepreneurs, this was very difficult to achieve. And it's important that is recognized this inside the roadmap as one of the key points related to all the women as workers and entrepreneurs. Virginia, the point 2.
Facilitating access to finance and capacity building relating to finance and entrepreneurship, particularly for solopreneurs and micro enterprises. So components under that involved developing and promoting inclusive financial solutions and doing this in partnership with public, private, and civil society institutions. Second was supporting access to digital banking, mobile money accounts, mobile commerce, blockchain-enabled assets and technologies. Many of these, by the way, are extremely important for Indonesia in terms of their interest in rural entrepreneurship and finance through technology. The third area was providing incentives to women and creating a dedicated environment for training to enhance the transition from solopreneurs to employer businesses and from the informal to the formal economy, a very important issue going forward.
How was received by the Leaders Declaration was much more in sense of reaffirming the commitment to gender equality and emphasize the pivotal role of women's and girls' empowerment and leadership at all levels for inclusive and sustainable development. Also, what is important to underline on this part is that they declare, as Federica said at the beginning, we will work on key factors such as equal access to education and opportunities, including STEM sectors, the promotion of women's entrepreneurship and leadership. So it means putting together all these key elements. And in the point 49, that is also important too, is reaffirm the commitment of enhancing digital financial inclusion of vulnerable and underserved segment of society, including micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, carrying forward the work of the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion and implementing the G20 2020 Financial Inclusion Action Plan. Also, they say we endorse the G20 menu of policy options for digital financial literacy and financial consumers and MSMEs protection on enhancing digital financial inclusion behind the COVID-19 crisis, with the aim to provide a guide for policymakers in their effort to lay the ground for new financial inclusion strategies in the post-pandemic world. Also, there are other key points that we can consider received inside the G20 roadmap, say promoting, coordinating with other ministries, women entrepreneurship by taking measures to eliminate legal, policy, procedural, and regulatory barriers and practice that impede women entrepreneurs' access to digital service, financial services, venture capital, and promote transparency measures to help identify gender investment gap. And also, and we can consider not only for us, but also probably for other working groups, the preservation and creation of decent work opportunities and promote transition from informal to formal economy, especially for migrants, young people, and women throughout developing labor market and employment policy.
The third recommendation was creating policy frameworks and strategic growth initiatives. So creating or updating overarching policy frameworks to support women's entrepreneurship, including sectors that have been hit the hardest by the pandemic. This, by the way, was a recommendation from the OECD section focused on entrepreneurship and SMEs, and they are going to be working with us on building this forward, developing actionable strategies with funding to overcome gaps in the ecosystem with innovative support services, critically important, and creating incentives to fund innovative sectors poised for growth. We have here a strong focus on STEM and STEAM opportunities.
How was received this point by the Leaders Declaration is we affirm the importance of a role of open, fair, equitable, sustainable, non-discriminatory and inclusive rule-based multilateral trade system in restoring growth, job creation, industrial and productivity, and promoting sustainable development, as well as our commitment to strengthen it in the WTO as its core. Also, another point that how was received on the other side on the roadmap is promoting collaboration with the relevant ministries by tailored, effective, and adaptive policies to boost and sustain job creation and support quality employment with a specific focus on decent work for women.
The fourth recommendation, and we've been working on this for quite a few years, create public procurement and access to market initiatives. The first part, implementing policies to promote public procurement spend with women-owned SMEs and providing incentives for large government contractors to subcontract contract value to women-owned SMEs by a minimum of a 10% increase in improvement for each country according to its baseline by 2030, using a step-by-step plan that will be piloted for 2 years and refined. I will be coordinating with Uli on the timing of a joint workshop, W20 and ITC, on public procurement, probably in the beginning of March, and a number of countries that are already doing work in this area will be profiled, as well as how-tos. It will be a virtual international summit on this issue. And then researching and reporting progress on private and public procurement, international trade, and e-commerce for women-owned businesses of various sizes.
In terms of how was adopted by the leaders' recommendation is final political agreement as set out in statement on a two-pillar solution to address the tax challenges arising from the digitalization on the economy, and in the detailed implementation plan released by the OECD G20 inclusive framework on base erosion and profit shifting on the October is an historical achievement throughout which will be established a more stable and fairer international tax system. Also, we can consider in terms of how was adopted by and inside the roadmap, promote financial inclusion of women, in particular, foster female access to credit, including, again, throughout financial literacy training and women-oriented credit mechanisms, and also, where applicable, expanding access to contributory schemes while considering other non-contributory form of financing.
Our fifth issue was promoting private and public investment, incentivizing private and public investment communities and philanthropists, an important piece we added this year, to incorporate a gender lens into their funding decisions across all asset classes. Allocating a minimum of 1 percentage point of the new global minimum tax of at least 15% on corporations endorsed by the G20 to fund women-owned and led SMEs and scale-ups to help close the estimated several trillion-dollar funding credit gap. Anne Ravanona's idea. Incentivizing all investors to invest in more women-founded and female male co-founded employer companies.
In terms of recommendation, in terms of leaders' recommendation is what we can say is the core is we welcome the hosting of the first G20 conference on women's empowerment, and will continue to enhance our concrete measures towards a systemic and cross-cutting approach to gender equality in our nation policy with an adequate implementation tools. We will work on women's empowerment in cooperation with the academia, civil society, and private sector. To this end, we support and convene at the G20 conference on women empowerment under the upcoming presidencies. We welcome the work of the Empower Alliance and its engagement with the G20 to be reviewed in 2025. We acknowledge the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative as an important partnership to support the women-led SMEs. Also, in terms of how was adopted by the roadmap is, if applicable, in collaboration with the social partners, we will make effort to introduce new measures or adapt existing ones to ensure that contributory systems are more accessible and have adequate coverage, strengthen social protection floors, and make social protection system inclusive, adequate, accessible, and effective for all. And now, a point that is last but not least, that we shared, and Martina shared with all the delegates, that Virginia and I would like to discuss and present to all of you as a point that every one of us, every working group, not only our working group, will develop and implement in the future. Virginia, the floor is yours, because I know that you worked so hard with many other people before me on this.
Thank you so much, Anna Maria. So the paper that Martina sent out on the 2nd of December was about Women Entrepreneurs Act. And we have what we call the We Act initiative to look at a longer time frame on action and implementation of recommendations that have come out of the communiques that we have developed. But because of needing to have unanimous support for these ideas in the Leaders Declaration, many of the issues that we cared the most about weren't able to be acted on or implemented because they didn't make the declaration. So we are looking at a multi-year initiative on working on implementation on some of the issues, some that did make the Leaders Declaration in the past, some that have not. The first one we're working on right now is public procurement. I've been in touch with a number of you about that. And we will be sending out a questionnaire for everyone to indicate if they are interested in working on women entrepreneurial implementation. There were some issues that were overarching issues that were of great interest to the women's enterprise and finance community, but that were broader than just women's entrepreneurship. So momentarily, we have them listed here as We Act goals that are cross-cutting, as is women's entrepreneurship, but broader than our official mandate. So any of these issues that other people are interested in, we would love to collaborate with your expertise on such issues as this year, placing gender equality at the heart of budgeting decisions by creating inclusive and innovative economic models that work for women and focus on achieving human well-being. The second one, ensuring equal representation of women at all levels of decision-making in public and private, national and global, political and economic bodies by 2030, adopting multi-year plans to achieve this goal and monitor progress annually. The third, and this is critically important in so many sectors, collecting, analyzing, and reporting on all areas identified using gender-sensitive and disaggregated data, developing gender impact assessments, leaving no one behind in the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of all legislative, political, strategic, and programmatic initiatives, including post-pandemic reconstruction plans and climate response strategies. Then finally, promoting education by investing in infrastructure to ensure women and girls have access to and participate in preschool to tertiary education, tertiary meaning at the university level, including early education and STEAM programs, that's STEM plus the arts, bolster technical and vocational training, digital, financial, and entrepreneurial skills, and lifelong learning. This is to enable women to secure quality employment with continuing education and progression during career breaks. Thank you so much for your attention, and we really look forward to working with you on implementation issues and action. Thank you. And it's
Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you, Anna Maria.
Thank you, Virginia and Anna Maria. And now the second working group is the labor working group. Employment policies, including macroeconomic, sectorial, and labor market policies, must put gender equality at the core of the emergency and recovery efforts to avoid long-term damages to women's job prospects. Elvira Marasco, W20 Italy Head of Delegation, and Mabel Bianco, W20 Argentina Head of Delegation. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm Mabel. I'm going to start and later is going to be Elvira. So please, could you pass the second? We are very honored to be able to be the chairs or coordinator of this group. As you know, the labor group is one of the three historic pillars of Women20. So traditionally, this is very important. And last year with the Italian presidency and specifically the Women20, it was great to approach and try to promote a change to make the Brisbane goal really more effective. Because as you know, in 2014, it was the creation of the Women20 in the Australia president, and it was the established the Brisbane goal that wants to decrease the gap for the 25 among men and women in labor. But really, since 2014 and since 21, I say 2020, we were repeating, and the G20 were repeating the same goal, and we couldn't find any advance. So Women20 Italy promote to change the approach and find out that the problem is that we need to look and to promote the change in the employment of women and how is the work for them. So as you know, women, we have had no equal access to the labor market. This is something worldwide. It could be some differences, but it's the same worldwide. We arrive late and we are not in the best positions. In many regions, especially developing ones, and in Latin America and the Caribbean, this is very, very clear. Women, we are only or most in the informal work market, labor market. This makes us to have less salary, less time for work, and also very bad inclusion in the labor force. So this is something that the COVID makes more clear. COVID-19 has the possibility or the good faith, let's see something good, to demonstrate how all inequalities for women, gender inequalities were demonstrated and been so evident that everybody must recognize what for many years we were telling the feminists and nobody takes care. So after the COVID, and talking about the recovery, because still we are in the COVID pandemic, but during the last year talking about the recovery, we consider so important to propose changes in the labor market for women. The next, please. The next slide, please. So our main objective was to put gender equality at the core of the emergency and the recovery efforts. Because as you know, always gender equality was said as an important issue, but it was not centered on that. So we want to do that. And we propose many issues specifically to increase jobs. But what we want is to to ask the G20 leaders to take measures to accelerate the implementation of national gender equality plans in the labor market and to really impact towards meeting the goal of reducing the gender gap by 2025. So we discuss and we propose many concrete and clear measures. So we are not talking so broad, but we concentrate requesting specifically measures. Please, the next one. Among those, we requested to increase the women employment rates, but in the creation of the new jobs, we request to create decent work. When we say decent work under the ILO considerations are jobs in the formal market with all the benefits and not in the informal one. Also, we want to ensure universal and accessible gender responsive social protection for all women in the formal and informal labor force, because this is something that we see very clearly, how the informal ones have no social protection measures to be also to solve the problem with the COVID. Promoting the universal ratification and implementation of the ILO standards and conventions. And this is something so important, and also including the last one is the ILO convention to eliminate the violence in the working place. And these are not only to say and speak about. It's necessary that the countries commit to make them really for all women in all the marketplace, force. So that's a very important issue we want, and we request that. Also, we say that it's necessary to address the systemic or structural barriers that in which are based the discrimination of women, because these are not only things that we could address changing a lot. It's much more. We need to change, to review the models of productivity, of exploitation of resources, and the distribution of benefits. These are the things that we were asking to approach. And of course, we want to have no any kind of women in all their diversity, and we included the diversity in gender also, that they have the same rights. This is very, very difficult. And as you know, we are fighting at the UN also to make the Agenda 2030 a reality for all. And still is not really very easy to do that. And also we were promoting that we could have some other possibilities. Please, the next one. And in this case, we request to have, is the other? Yeah, thank you. We were asking to develop services to support unpaid care that, of course, everywhere are the burden for the women in the families. What kind of women you want to imagine? The care of children, the care of ill people, the care of disability, and the elderly. So we promote that the governments develop those services, and in which they create jobs for those carers, that most of them are women. So we could increase the labor force through these services, but if they are really in the formal way. So we also promote and suggested to have the maternity protection by law and to give the same parental leave for men and women, and to recognize the value of unpaid care and domestic work in the definition of economic and social policies. So we also want to empower women's occupations, avoiding the horizontal segregation, and to support the women to reach the high top levels in which they are less and less representing, and this is to avoid the vertical segregation. So indirectly, we need to have and promote the women access to decision makings at all levels, also at workplace. And of course, we need to have these as not only something to say, but something to do in real terms, that all women could be and have the same possibilities. So these are the issues that we want to do. The next, please. All that was proposed, and we have the great pleasure to say that the G20 in June in Catania, they adopted the G20 roadmap towards and beyond the Brisbane goal and the rapidly enhance the quality and quantity of women employment, with a particular focus on closing the gender pay gap. This is really something that we celebrate, and we are very happy. And it's, for us, we consider a great success. And as the entrepreneurship and finance group said before, in many points, in the G20, they mention and they refer to that, and they are really committed to that. So this is really something that we are very happy, and we recognize the Italian presidents and our Women20 that this could be possible. Now I pass to Elvira, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Mabel. Thank you. It was a pleasure to work with you. I believe that we can all be quite satisfied with the result of the Italian presidency, not only as Italians, but all the colleagues who have contributed with this work. To be so, it is sufficient to understand the importance of some phrases that were not previously revealed in the Leaders Declaration. Pay attention. I think we all agree that we have paved the way. There is still a long way to go, but we are aware of it. We are aware that the change is taking place, and we, all of us, all the delegates, all the W20 delegates are the actors of this. Change is in phrases like this. We commit, I love this verb, to implement the G20 roadmap towards and beyond the Brisbane goal, and to rapidly enhance the quality and quantity of women's employment, with a particular focus on closing the gender pay gap. Important results achieved with the declaration of the leaders, like the content of the G20 roadmap towards and beyond the Brisbane target. One of the topics addressed by the roadmap concerns the decision-making places. This is another very important topic. Recommendations are part of the process of enhancement of women's careers. Promote measures to increase the participation and representation of women in decision-making bodies, including public organization, private and public undertaking, decision-making bodies and workers and employers organization. Another thing that I want to underline is a phrase which was in the roadmap. Promote policy measures aimed to achieving fair and transparent career progression process, including the selection criteria for managers and other key positions, such as regular and voluntary communication by companies on gender gaps in promotion, recruitments, and managerial positions. Quantity and quality of work are the recurring aspect that crosses the roadmap. and this is very important, and I'm very happy with this. Sustain job creation for women and support quality employment, identifying even the most vulnerable groups, such as migrant women. The use of parental leave and all possible tools to make working and personal life more sustainable for men and women, and to develop appropriate care services are particularly highlighted in the roadmap. I suggest you to read with a lot of attention the roadmap. Something is a big success. Ensure equal opportunity to access lifelong learning, reskilling, upskilling, and workplace training, especially for low-skilled female workers that are more likely to suffer the impact of employment changes. Provide enabling environments for women to take control of their lives in a world of rapid economic and technological change, giving opportunities to enter, maintain, this is another important word, and progress in employment. Gender stereotypes in the labor market are a barrier for women, both in their access to the labor market and in their choice of particular jobs and to career progressions. They need to be combated, as they make it difficult for women to be integrated in a way that really takes their skills into account. The risk is that some skills just do not develop among women due to gender stereotypes. Addressing discrimination and gender stereotypes in the labor market promote initiatives to address discriminatory social and cultural norms, preventing the achievement of gender equality in education and in the work. Promote respectful, inclusive, and not discriminatory language in job. You can find this in the W20 handbooks. There are 15 advertisements and description, as well as in the workplace. Reinforce the strength measures to tackle all forms of discrimination in employment. This is also very important. And combat stereotyped representation of women and men on their role in paid and unpaid work. The gender pay gap is expressed as direct discrimination against women and also as an effect of the indirect discrimination of women. The roadmap makes it a key point of government action. This is another very, very important. I am very excited about this. This is something that really we fight together. Linda, Laura, and Martina, they know very well how many walls we had in front while we were discussing these issues. Fighting horizontal segregation is another point present in the roadmap and requested by us. This is another important, I talked before. The roadmap considers women as being particularly vulnerable, especially women in rural areas or in overrepresented sectors, and commits towards. It's important to promote a more even distribution of women and men across sector and occupation. Seek to eliminate all laws, regulation, practices, and provision that directly or indirectly discourage or even restrict either women or men from working a specific occupation of form or employment or as appropriate. Consider reviewing pay, career advancement, and promotion policies to identify and eliminate implicit gender disparities. Address the higher incidence of old age poverty among women, also because of inequalities at work and at home, including by exploring possible measures to reduce the gender gap in benefits and entitlements for pensioners and elderlies. Allora, looking to the future, we can consider ourselves satisfied. Now we face some important challenges. First, from words, we must move to action. This is a phrase that always Linda Laura says in Italian and English, doesn't matter. We need to monitor the situation and make sure that our recommendation will be applied. Because, you know, one thing is a word, one thing is a word applied. Second, we have to push for all the objectives that we have not achieved. alongside the new challenges that are opening up to be taken on by the G20. Third, we need to continue with our sisterhood approach, but I would like to leave to Linda Laura this word that she loves a lot. So I want just to conclude that now the presidency will be hosted by Indonesia, and I warmly welcome it. I'm sure the Indonesian team will work brilliantly, and we will be in the front row to support you at any time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elvira. Thank you, Mabel. And now is the turn of Digital Working Group, which I coordinated with Cheryl Van Dijk, co-head of European delegation. We consider crucial empowering women in designing, building, and leading our shared digital future to foster the full participation of women and girls in the digital society. We ask it to promote digital citizenship by ensuring access to ICT, information communication technologies to all women, independently of their age, education level, economic condition, provenience, and geographical position, to identify and fight cultural barrier to access, connectivity, and digital skills acquisition. If I can have the slide, please, of Digital Working Group, Sveva or Martina.
Let me know if you are able to share it.
Otherwise, I will, if you like.
Yes, please, Sveva.
Okay, I'll do it.
The pandemic has hastened digital transformation, dramatically deepening gender inequalities. It is imperative to halt the digital marginalization of girls and women impacted by this disruption, and urgently take action to ensure a just digital transformation where girls and women are fairly, meaningfully, and equally engaged as digital citizens. Digital citizenship has been one of key words of our working group. So the first recommendation, ensure safe access and use of digital technologies for all women and girls in G20 economies by 2026. Essentially by three actions. First, removing barriers such as prohibitive cost, insufficient infrastructure, unsafe online environment, and harmful gender stereotypes. Second, facilitating the use of the internet, mobile telephony, and other digital tools by women and girls for health, education, financial, employment, and other purposes. And third, developing gender-sensitive ethical guidelines on artificial intelligence and other digital technologies. Next slide, please. Sveva. Yes. Next slide.
Yes, coming. I'm just trying. That's what happens.
Concerning the adoption in the declaration of this recommendation, I found the three articles basically, in which in the first article, 20 cities and circular economy, there is a mention on enabling more equitable access to digital innovations. The main article is Article 35 on employment and social protection, where the digital gender divide is explicitly mentioned. We will work to ensure decent working conditions for remote and platform workers and strive to adapt our regulatory frameworks to new forms of work, ensuring that these are fair and inclusive, leaving no one behind, while paying special attention to addressing the gender digital divide, the access to internet, and intergenerational inequalities. And finally, in the Article 51 on data gaps, I found also the mention to providing digital public services that are human-centric, proactive, easy to work, and accessible to all. Concerning, next slide, the roadmap, the adoption of this recommendation in the roadmap, I have two sentences in which is mentioned explicitly to bridge the gender digital divide and increase the provision of digital skill training for all women, especially young women, and those returning to work after a prolonged break, and other relevant measures to bridge the gender digital divide. And the next is to facilitate access, build public trust, and simplify administrative procedures, including by harnessing the potential of digital technologies, raising awareness on social protection schemes, and ensuring access to information about individual rights and entitlements. Okay, next slide. I will comment the last recommendation, the fourth on cyber violence, and leave the second and third to Cheryl to comment. The fourth recommendation is to adopt and implement comprehensive and coordinated policies encompassing all relevant measures to identify, prevent, and prosecute cyber violence and threats of violence by two actions. One, promoting awareness-raising programs throughout society on how to prevent harmful online gender-based violence. And second, legislating for prevention and punishment of online violence. Concerning, next slide, please. The adoption in the G20 Leaders Declaration. Basically, in the Article 46 on digital economy, higher education and research, there is an explicit recognition of the role of technology and innovation as key enabler of global recovery and sustainable development. It states also that we recognize the growing role that ICT, information communication technologies, play in our society. In this context, we emphasize the need to address the increased security challenges in the digital environment, including from ransomware and other forms of cybercrime. With this in mind, we will work to strengthen bilateral, not the previous one, Sveva, I'm just finishing, okay. With this in mind, we will work to strengthen bilateral and multilateral cooperation to secure our ICT, address shared vulnerable and threats, and combat cybercrime. So this is the reference to cyber violence. I leave the floor to Cheryl now to comment the second and third recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianna. It's been such a pleasure coordinating the digital empowerment working group with you this year. And I wanted to make my observations first and then kind of illustrate them. And I think one of the key observations that we have to share looking at the digital component, but as well as the other things our illustrious colleagues are elucidating today, is that we have been quite successful at integrating the communique and the mission of supporting the interests of girls and women in the G20 Leaders Declaration and in the roadmap in particular. And I think we have to applaud our Italian colleagues in the first place for spearheading this success and for their diligent work on the ground to make that happen. Also, all of the leaders of the working groups, and I would like to take the moment of just thanking my EU colleagues who I can hear in all the language, who we know have been really active on the ground in helping us to secure some of these really key successes that I think personally has raised the magnitude of not only the visibility of the Women20 work, but this is resonating in the actual language of the Leaders Declaration. And I'm very proud of our work and very grateful to the Italian presidency once again. So it has been successful. The Leaders Declaration and the roadmap, by very impartial standards, is a quite feminist document. And here, by which I mean the mention of the words women and girls appears very frequently through the body of the entire work. And as Jana noted, just around gender digital inclusion or digital gender inclusion, we see that word show up no less than 35 times in these bodies. And in the areas that I'm going to look at specifically today, the terms women and girls specifically are highlighted 11 times just in the few articles and in the roadmap language that I am going to share with you. So I think these are incredible steps forward. And again, I stress the term magnitudes. This is what we want to see happen. This is what we want to continue to see happening. So my third observation is simply around the specificity of some of our targets, which I think were very specific, very quantitative even. And this is really a question of us setting those objectives and helping to move the entire dialogue in that direction. Again, we have been successful in that, but these are maybe the to-do items for the next phase, is to crick up that Leaders Declaration a notch during the Indonesian presidency, and in the roadmap and in our own work, where this We Act action in particular is very reassuring and is the kind of thing that we want to embrace and engage ourselves in going forward, including with the Indonesian presidency. So I have 2 points to review based on the distribution of tasks between Jana and I. And that is starting with the next slide, please. Beva. Where we're talking about, I'm sorry, it was the previous one, where we're talking about digital skills and upskilling for girls and women. The previous slide, please, Beva, sorry. I got too excited. There we go. So our recommendation number 2 in the W20 communique was the guaranteeing of foundational digital skills for women and girls, all women and girls of the G20 members, with pathways to future work and expertise in disruptive technologies by 2026. And this by upskilling and reskilling women to address skills shortages in digital and STEAM jobs, providing funding and incentives to public and private sectors to provide training and career development in digital fields to women and girls, and by implementing skills programs that promote women's financial inclusion and entrepreneurship, focused on and enabled by digital technologies to support women's economic development. What I love about this recommendation is, of course, it intersects with other recommendations throughout the Women20 communique. I focus specifically on financial inclusion, also women's entrepreneurship. And again, I'm very proud of our work, that the messages are, that they resonate and that they are reinforced in the different parts of the communique. And I think this is also why we were successful at seeing actual language from the communique show up in the Leaders Declaration and the roadmap. Next slide, please, Seva. So in the Article 36 on education, which we've already heard about, we commit to ensure access quality for all, with particular attention to women and girls and vulnerable students. And then Article 37, the critical role of education for sustainable development, which also includes empowering younger generations with skills to address global challenges. So these, I think, are definitely in line with the objectives of STEAM and digital inclusion. Next slide. A focus on life learning, reskilling, and upskilling, which we also asked for verbatim. And then at the bottom of this page, a focus specifically on science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and ICT. So in the recommendations, there are also in the body of the Leaders Declaration, but in the recommendation for the roadmap, you see resonance with our digital empowerment recommendation number 2. Next slide, please. In this section, we are arguing for greater representation of women in leadership, and specifically these innovative strategic sectors of the economy that we know are driving all of the development of our economies. So we ask for equal leadership in digital fields, specifically in the G20, including technology organizations, startups, policymaking, and academia, where I think when you're talking about innovation in particular, you really need to see leadership, equal leadership by women, also in the fields where we're carrying out research, development, and innovation. Hence the point on academia, but also again on startups and entrepreneurship. This by ensuring women are equally represented in tech research and development, creating visibility of women in high-level positions in the ICT sector, which also is transversal with our objectives around culture and changing stereotypes, and providing fiscal and other incentives to achieve gender-based leadership in the tech sector, again, including academia and research institutions. If we look at the language in the next slide, in the declaration itself, the language is a bit neutral. It's more general in terms of emphasizing the pivotal role of women's and girls' empowerment and leadership at all levels for inclusive and sustainable development. So it's more broad, but again, it is feminist. And in the next section specifically refers to leadership in STEM sectors and promotion of women's entrepreneurship as well. I would like to make a small clarification. I think the reference in the previous, in our recommendation number 4 about gender-based online violence, that the reference my illustrious colleague made was to security. I think that's cybersecurity, so a little bit of a distinction between gender-based violence. Of course, we're looking at both of these things, and if all of the recommendations from the W20 are taken up in the G20 leaders statement, then of course we want language on both of these, in both of these areas, which we do have. And the final page, please. In the roadmap specifically, again, promoting measures to increase participation and representation of women in decision-making bodies. And a point that I specifically appreciate is, and in workers and employers organizations. So not only leading in organizations, but leading in setting the policy that impacts ICT sectors, but as well as labor across the board. And finally, promote policy measures aimed at achieving fair and transparent career progression processes, including selection criteria for managers and other key positions, such as regular and voluntary communication by companies on gender gaps in promotion, recruitment, and managerial position. And this is just, again, it is not specific to the ICT sector. We would like to see language in that direction because of the pivotal role that ICT is now having in our society. But of course, we welcome greater communication, greater transparency, and this is what this roadmap recommendation, I think, demands. And again, all in all, I think we should be very, very happy. So far, the work is never done with the outcomes we've managed to achieve this year.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. And let's move to the next working group, violence against women and girls and gender-based violence. Violence against women and girls manifests itself as physical, sexual, psychological, or economic violence, At home as domestic violence, in workplaces as cyber-based harassment and stalking. Violence against women is a violation of human rights and one of the most serious discrimination against women, affecting their fundamental right to freedom, silencing their voices and putting barriers to the equal and just participation in the public and private spheres. Violence against women and girls will have to be eradicated to achieve gender equality. Okay, Francesca Delisanti, W20 Italy delegate, and Pam Raiput, W20 India head of delegation. The floor is yours.
Ciao, Gianna, thank you very much. And it's a very great pleasure for me to be with you all from all the world. And hello to my colleague Pam that is joining me on this virtual stage. I'm gonna share the slides. So Pam, I don't hear you very well, but I hope that everything is working. Okay, great. So as Gianna was saying, okay, great. So today I'm going to be together with my co-coordinator, that is Pam Rajput, and we have worked very hard on violence against women and girls. Well, first of all, because we know as a fact that this year especially has been a very strong year for women, a tough one, and also that's why we decided to give a special attention to violence against women and girls. For sure, I strongly believe that we make a path. No, we are making a bit of history, and we are giving the next generation a chance, the chance to have the right to live free from violence and from all forms of acts of violence. That's why in our declaration, what we have start from is the definition of what actually means violence against women and girls. As Gianna was mentioning, we start from the fact that for sure is a global emergency, and its eradication is a step on the road to gender equality. So that's why the first, for us, most important fundamental is to focus on the fact that is a violation of human rights, and every woman and every girl in the whole world has the right to live free from violence. So she has the right to freedom, and we don't want her voices and their voices to be silent. And these kind of things can create barriers, but also they prevent equal and just participation in the public and in the private spheres, as a whole the group already shown us. So the idea for us was to start with a holistic approach into taking care of this topic. So we analyze how many different kinds of violence we can have, and you can see here. So we identify the physical, the sexual, the psychological, but also the economical form of violence. And these kind of things can happen both in home and in workplaces, but also in public spaces. So that's why we thought about 4 main actions and 4 main areas where we would like the governments to take care of. So the first one is to develop integrated and coherent public policies to ensure the right of every woman and girl to live free from violence. So for us, this is one of the strongest statements that we want to achieve, and we want to arise. And in order to obtain these, we identify 2 main elements. So the first one is preventing, punishing, and providing reparation for all acts of violence on one side, and on the other side, allocating funds for training for professionals involved into the multi-agency response. And that is because what we have seen, and also talking with the expert worldwide, is that especially in the law enforcement, in the judicial area, but also in social and health sector, what happens is that there is always a risk to live and to experiment the secondary victimization, and it's something that we don't want to happen. So that's why for us it's very important also to involve both the multi-agency response and to train them. The second part, so the second point is about to empower and support the right of every woman and girl to live free from violence and to offer quality services for survivors. So in this case, the way we see these point developed as three main points. So the first one is by increasing funding. It's something that is not happening in all the world, and for instance, is not happening even in Italy. So we need to increase funding and allocating appropriate public financial resources for the women specialist support services, because we saw that thanks to the women support specialists, that's the way women in all the world, it's the first touch and the first point to get out from a violence experience. But also we need to support the healthcare models. And again, the idea is to train health professionals in order to being able to take care in the right and proper way of where a violence happen. Again, in order to also to have adequate and accessible safe treatment, because also that is a very, very common things that is not happening actually in the world. And the last part that is very important is about the providing women survivors of violence with an access to economic means, because the idea, of course, is that violence is always linked with the capability of women to work and to the link with the financial opportunity. So the idea is also to give the chance to these women to get out of violence, being able to work and to get back into their life, taking care of themselves. And of course, this is also very much connected with the fact that also we need to have access on legal services, but also to social, economic, and environmental justice that can support also the child, because especially child that are witnesses of this kind of violence, and we are thinking most of all to the orphan of feminicides. These are victims double times, because they lost a mom, most of the time the father is the killer, and the society forget about them. So the idea is also to give support to them. And of course, taking care of addressing the issue of forced early marriages and female genital mutilation. So everything is inside this second part, this second point that was for us also very important in terms of addressing this important topic. The third one is connected to what the labor also was talking about, that is providing safe and welcoming workplaces. And this point is mainly reached taking care of the ratification and full implementation of the ILO Convention, so the 190 that everybody knows. But also we know that in the world there are also international and regional conventions that are related to violence against women and girls or gender-based violence. For instance, the Istanbul Convention that we know is in Europe, but is very, very well made. So the last one, and then I will leave the floor to my colleague, Pam. We also thought that it was important, it is important to combat human trafficking and the modern slavery of women, also because this is something that is not very much also taken into consideration when we are thinking about violence against women and girls. So the idea is to pay particular attention to migrants, asylum seeker and refugee, and of course all the other marginalized groups, and doing what? Providing quick access to not exploitative employment, so to quick access to the resident status, and of course, again, to work, so the access to a paid salary, so the capability to be able to contribute again to the society. So These are our main four important topics, and I would like to leave the floor to Pam, that we talk a bit more about how the G20 did or did not take into consideration our points.
Hello. Can you remove the slide, Francisca? All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Greetings to all. First of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the members of Working Group on Violence Against Women and Girls for their inputs as we were preparing for the communique. Also, I want to take the opportunity to thank the Italian W20 for an excellent advocacy that they could do during their presidency, and the group which has organized this event under the patronage of W20 for this stock-taking exercise, if I can call it, or an assessment exercise. I think we are doing it for the first time. Having said that, my young W20 delegate, Francisca, she's the youngest probably. She's already shared with you what we put in the communique. But coming to the analysis of the G20 Leaders Declaration and roadmap, and what has been acknowledged and what has been committed, I would like to divide it under three heads. One is affirmation, second is commitment, and third is references. In the first category, that is of affirmations, paragraph 8 of the G20 Leaders Declaration makes a reference to mental health as well as ending violence against women and girls. It makes a reference to that, and it affirms that in the context of continuing health services. Second is commitment. Commitment, of course, is in our key paragraph, which most people have referred to, and that is paragraph 33 on gender equality and empowerment. Here, I must say that only running reference in the whole paragraph, but that running reference is important. Commitment is important, and that is in words, elimination of gender-based violence. So this is para 33 in terms of commitment. But the second commitment that we get is more in the roadmap that we are, talking about today. And of course, the roadmap of, is in the context of Brisbane and workplaces. But I must say it is very well framed and broad-based, where we find, the G20 leaders committing to work towards adopting measures to prevent and eliminate all forms of violence and harassment. Mind you, this is all related to workplace, but they're talking in details over here. Work towards adopting measures to prevent and eliminate all forms of violence and harassment and associated psychosocial risk in the world of work, including, now this is again, they are talking in a very broad-based manner, and that is to be appreciated, where diversity comes in, including gender-based, racial, and other discrimination. And most important, again, is that it also takes cognizance of what we have said in our communique, and that is ILO 190, the International Labour Organization Convention 190 on, the safe places of work. Now, this is, again, recognizing that work environment will be free of violence and harassment. To me, this is a great achievement, and I think it gives us a kind of a tool to do advocacy with our governments to ratify the ILO convention, because only very few countries have so far ratified that. So we can do the advocacy for that. The third category that I want to talk about is that of reference. It's not a direct on violence against women, but it uses the words that are important to us. In the digital economy paragraph 46, there is a reference to cybercrime. And we are talking about cybercrime in our communique also. Likewise, in paragraph 48, there is a reference to online abuse and online violence. Again, we are talking about how in these pandemic situation, there is increase in the online abuse, there is increase on online violence. They're not talking on this kind of a violence on women, but there is a reference to this kind of a violence which we can be So what we felt was not like the entrepreneurship group, not like the labor group, not like the digital group. There is a comprehensive kind of addressing the issue in this thing, but we have made some headway in our G20 declaration, leaders declaration, and also the roadmap. And so I would say we have made a headway, but we have a long way to go. And it is in this context, you see, that I have to say that you are talking about so many issues, which we are saying key issues, the 3 pillars and others. But to me, I think violence-free life is most important. It is critical and it is key to all the 3 pillars, and for that matter, any pillar. It may be social pillar, it may be economic pillar, it may be political. We are asking for women in decision-making bodies. And we know how women who are coming forward to contest elections, what kind of harassment and what kind of violence they are suffering. So I think it is time that we realize that violence-free life and dignity of women is key to true empowerment of women. So if we are talking of empowerment of women, women empower, nothing can happen if women do not have a violence-free life and that kind of a environment, safe environment, both in public as well as in private life. So I'll go with, towards the end, I would say, I will go with Elvira to say that we need to focus on action. We need to focus on implementation. Whatever has been conceded, we really appreciate. We have come a long way for that matter, still long miles to go to realize that kind of a thing. So we need to focus on action. We need to focus on implementation. And of course, we worked at national level, W20, we collectively provide that kind of a back, support to each group. And I would request Virginia. Virginia made a very comprehensive presentation because they had to share a lot. And she talked about W20 We Act. Now in this We Act, she has 5 principles. I will not repeat that, but I would say, request her that please add 6, and that is violence-free life. You will not be able to enjoy the first 5 unless you have the 6th, and that 6th is violence-free life and environment and a life with dignity. With these words, I thank my co-coordinator, Francisca, and all the organizers of this event. And I'm sure next again, we'll say, we have again, but we had a song when we went to Beijing, and that is, we shall overcome, we shall overcome. And I'm sure that we shall overcome with regard to the demands and vision of W20. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. It was a very great pleasure for me meeting you, and thank you for your speech, so powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pam,
Thank you,
for your insight, and thank you, Francesca. Let's move to the next working group on environmental sustainability. Climate change and indirect consequences of natural disasters could impact on women's health, safety, and rights. At the same time, green and blue economy could represent new professional opportunities for both women and girls. Sveva Veduto, Italy delegate of Women20, and Narnia Boller-Müller, W20 South Africa head of delegation. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Sveva's going to start, and I think she's just putting up our presentation.
Yes, Nanya, give me just a moment because I minimized the the screen and I cannot see it now. Yes, okay, so I will. Yes, here is it. Okay, thank you very much. As Jana said, Nadia and I coordinated the part of the environmental sustainability group, which was absolutely a very challenging and interesting activity, especially during these days when every day we hear about new and terrible news about the difficulties of our planet on the environmental questions. You may remember that Planet People Prosperity was one of the were the three key words for the Italian presidency. So we thought as a W20 group that environmental sustainability would be definitely an important topic to follow. We will, well, I just asked this question. We find that this sort of statement, a global economic transformation is needed to both limit climate change and foster human and planetary well-being. Is this a precondition or is this an objective? I really don't have a question. So I think it's something which goes in round, and it's a precondition and it's an objective which is not being reached, but it's a precondition for something. So I leave it to your discussion, to your thought about this question that was given. Women and climate change is present in our activity and in the G20 leaders. Women are most frequently the first responders to all the difficulties given by crisis, including health, food, and water security. And women have also proven to be the agents of change in this situation, and especially in areas of resources sustainability, and are the driving forces behind the shift to a well-being economy. So their role is very important in any of these situations. What we ask of the G20 leaders to engage? Well, we ask them to engage their activities in order to, first of all, prevent and mitigate the effect of climate change and environmental degradation of women, and then provide equal opportunities in the climate environment and energy sectors, including green, blue, and circular economies for a socially just transition. We realize these are very big questions, but why not? I mean, we have to ask big questions, hopefully to have the immediate little answers, but going towards these goals and these objectives. Prevent and mitigate, I just explain and expand the items. Prevent and mitigate the effect of climate change and environmental degradation of women. We asked the leaders to provide more effective mitigation and adaptation measures through responsive interventions, and health equity by the One Health approach. So this is the first suggestion we asked them. We asked them to provide measures to guarantee education and decent work opportunities for women affected by natural disasters and other effects of climate change. We asked to strengthen equal access to environmental justice and tackle discrimination that affects women's rights and their ability to adapt to climate change and other forms of environmental degradation. We asked to ensure all climate finance is as gender just, and ensure that women are equal representation in decision-making position. As you can see, a very different level of goals that goes from the big approaches, One Health approach, One Planet, One Health, down to more direct and so to say, possible or at least more easily reachable goals, such as given an equal representation in decision-making position. Not easy, of course, but with some moves possible. So this is what we think that the leaders should do. Again, as for providing equal opportunities in climate, environment, and energy sectors, including the green, blue, and circular economies for the socially just transition, we ask the leaders to support inclusive job creation and entrepreneurial business, investing in education, upskilling, and reskilling to increase women ecological and carbon literacies. Education is another topic that goes through all the W20 groups, and definitely something which is absolutely important for women, but not only for women. We ask them also to promote strategies for sustainable food and water security and building resilience of women to climate change. Resilience is one of the top words of the Indonesian presidency, so something which can be a sort of bridge between our work and their hour during the Indonesian presidency. Now I will give the floor to my colleague Narnia Bollmuller, that she will speak about the G20 uptake of our environmental sustainability recommendation of W20 and on the roadmap, what we can find in both the declaration and then the roadmap. Narnia, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sveva, and thank you to those of you who did work with us on this. As Sveva has indicated, planet was very much part of Italy's push. And I think that the inclusion of environmental sustainability was absolutely marvelous. And also the consensus around climate change as being an important aspect of this as well. But we all know what happened in Glasgow, and this is probably the most controversial topic that was put before the leaders from any of the groups, including our own. So in terms of the leadership statements, paragraph 2 does refer to issues around critical challenges, right, such as ensuring food security and environmental sustainability. So we have agreed upon a shared vision to combat climate change and other important steps towards the achievement of gender equality. We've also advanced in our common efforts to ensure benefits of digitalization that are shared broadly, safely, and contribute towards reducing inequalities. So this is quite a mixed paragraph in the sense that it deals with a whole lot of things together. So it's about food security, of course, water and energy security would also be very relevant here, environmental sustainability, climate change. I think this is the only place that it is really addressed. And then I think linking to some extent climate change to the achievement of gender equality, although it's not, we're not certain about that. I mean, it's a difficult paragraph to read, but here we have it, and we have the various acknowledgements from the leaders. Next page, sorry. In paragraph 9 is also very long, but it refers to the 2030 agenda for sustainable development and the Addis Ababa action agenda. And we know that for a change, I think the SDGs were far more gender mainstreamed than the MDGs were. So sort of the second part of paragraph 9, which is on the second part of the slide. So there's recognizing the importance of nationally owned strategies, SDG localization, women and youth empowerment is mentioned there, sustainable production and responsive consumption patterns, And as we know, that is related to the environment. And therefore sustainable and modern energy for all. And again, reference to the 2030 agenda and G20 support to COVID-19 response and recovery. So here we do have specific reference to women and youth empowerment. And we have specific reference again to issues related to the sustainability of the environment here, with the focus being on energy. Next slide. Paragraph 20, one of the recommendations that we did make in our group was around intermediary cities. And so this is included in paragraph 20 of the leadership statement, and also refers to the circular economy. So here we will support intermediary cities in adopting integrated and inclusive urban planning, which we recommended, accelerating transitions towards clean and sustainability, which we recommended, and sustainable mobility for all, which we also recommended. What's also mentioned there is improving waste management, fostering empowerment and decent work for women, youth, migrants, and refugees, assisting disabled and elderly persons, enhancing food system sustainability, and enabling more equitable access to digital innovations. And here, for the second time in the leadership statement, we see that gender empowerment and sort of the sustainability and digital innovations are referred to in the same paragraph. So that's also something interesting. That's a question that I'll ask a bit later in the presentation. Next slide. So we have a little bit more in the roadmap, which deals with the policy principles to ensure access to adequate social protection. So it's actually Annex 2, where we see a little bit more around sustainable environment, but again, quite limited, and also linked to the digital transformation, but there's no indication as to why this is done. So you'll see there the digital transformation and green transition, along with other social and economic changes, are creating new forms of work, changing job requirements and skills demand. And of course, we've mentioned that because the green transition does, and in our recommendation, we pointed out that it does provide far more opportunities for women in terms of work, but there's nothing mentioned about the blue and the circular economies in this instance. So there are other job opportunities with regards to that, and that's on page 14. Sorry, if you could go back, Seva. Could we go back? Sorry. This is the last to the previous page. Okay, page 15, dealing specifically with achieving sustainable and inclusive growth, and referring again to green and digital transitions towards a broad understanding of the importance of social protection. So here we see a changing world, and we see that social protection is necessary in a changing world, and then for improving safety and health at work, which is the main focus of the roadmap, I've already mentioned. Next page. In page 18, deals with employment policies that incentivize the uptake of quality jobs, and to facilitate market participation, including fostering skills development, again, for digital and green transformations through lifelong education and training. So my question is why green and digital appeared in all indirect references to a sustainable environment and the climate crisis, because it really jumps out. Perhaps these are the two areas where there are job opportunities, new job opportunities, but we also take it beyond the green in terms of the approaches, international approaches that have been taken by almost all other multilateral organizations. Next page. So what is missing? First of all, the importance of women in crises, and health, food, and water security. So health security is not referred to much. That we are proven agents of change. In other words, to see women as being active and not passive recipients of let's say, social protection. It's necessary, but the passivity needn't be there. And also, we're driving forces behind the shift to a well-being economy. A well-being economy, also a well-known term in international organizations, and not mentioned at all. I've mentioned women's mainstreaming in the blue economy to ensure the health of our oceans as we build back better. This is the new challenge that we are facing, really, the acidification of the oceans. And they cover the majority of our planet. So therefore, it is very important that we pay attention to the oceans. And then another thing, the valuable nexus between gender equality, One Health, and the well-being economy within the context of environmental sustainability and the climate crisis is not really referred to in any way. And I think that's one of the things that could strengthen our approach to environmental sustainability. And I think that is all. Thank you very much.
Okay, Nadia, thank you. Thank you, Sveva, for your comprehensive illustration of environmental sustainability working group. And now we have the two last commissions on one on equity in health commission. Globally, the COVID-19 virus has increased the demand for health services, but most of the public healthcare system have cut their budget for years and reduced and are underpaid their workers, the majority of whom are women. Flavia Franconi, coordinator of Equity in Health Commission, cannot be with us for health problems. Martina Rogato will report on Health Working Group. Martina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Gianna. It's a huge responsibility to talk, let's say, substituting Professor Flavia Franconi. We would like to thanks her so much for creating a special commission on health, equity in health, engaging lots of international experts in order to focus our communique, special focus on health, equity, and gender medicine, has been focusing on, let's say, three main areas of recommendation. The first one has been guarantee health and care for all. The second one is promote free, universal, accessible, and affordable healthcare systems to combat COVID-19 and how the pandemic and other global significant existing and potential future disease. And the third point has been focused on develop and fund multidisciplinary strategic plans on gender medicine. How to guarantee health and care for all through, let's say, 7 actions. One is ensuring adequate and equitable financing on infrastructure and services. The second one is strengthening gender-sensitive public health care system. The third one, offering the best prevention and universal health care, including people with disability and older people. The fourth action, ensuring strong development of local public health services, including mental health issues. Also taking advantages of artificial intelligence and different forms and tools of telemedicine. And last but not least, guarantee healthcare for all means also ensuring sexual and reproductive health services as recommended by the WHO. For promoting free, universal, accessible and affordable healthcare system to fight against COVID-19, it's important to guarantee equitable access to all control tools, drugs, including vaccines and medical devices, also supporting the production of thermostable vaccines and drugs, the one that do not need low temperatures for transporting and distributing, also in isolated regions where women are the most affected ones. Is also we also supported, in order to promote the free, universal and accessible healthcare system to combat against COVID-19, the let's say temporary waiver of patent rights of the trade and intellectual property rules, to enable the production of COVID-19 vaccination together with other engagement groups, and like Women20, we did a joint statement to support these. Finally, how to develop and fund multidisciplinary strategic plans on gender medicine, according to us and our special commission, was fundamental to invest in research that considers biological and gender differences in essential risk factors, biomarkers, mechanisms, and other outcomes of disease, drug metabolism and response in relation to specific life cycle requirements. This seems to be very, let's say, this should be normal, but it's not. This is why we are asking to adopt and develop a gender approach on all of these fields. We are very happy that these were our key recommendations delivered by our commission together with all of our delegates on equity and in health and gender medicine. And we are happy and glad that also the Leaders Declaration of last October delivered a specific article on health, stating and sharing. I'm sharing this screen to show you the exact reference. We reaffirm Article 8 of the Leaders Declaration, the importance of ensuring the continuity of health services beyond COVID-19 and of strengthening national health systems and primary healthcare services in light of the repercussions of the pandemic on mental health and well-being due to isolation, unemployment, food insecurity, increased violence against women and girls, and constrained access to education as well as health services, including sexual and reproductive health, paying special attention to women and girls and to the need of the most vulnerables. Obviously, we would be happier of having something more in the Leaders Declaration. This is a first step, a start. Pandemic is not over, and we hope that the G20 Indonesia will continue taking into consideration gender medicine. Thank you so much. I give back the floor to you, Gianna.
Yes, thank you, Martina. And the last but not least, we have the Cultural Change and Gender Stereotype Commission. G20 government should allocate funds for national plans against the gender stereotypes, unconscious cognitive processes that produce a distortion of reality in all contexts: education, workplace, family, society, artificial intelligence. The aim is to activate a cultural change that makes boys and girls free to choose their own self-fulfillment. Fabiana Giacomotti, the coordinator of Cultural Change and Gender Stereotype Commission, unfortunately is involved in another meeting today. Elvira Marasco, the W20 Italy head of delegation, will illustrate the recommendation of this working group. Elvira, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gianna. Thank you very much. Cultural change and gender stereotypes is a cross-topic newly introduced as a focus area by the W20 Italian presidency. Why we strongly want this topic? Because gender stereotypes and bias are all over in the culture of each countries. We want to point out that if you read the roadmap and the Leader Declaration, fighting against gender stereotypes is all over, because they are very well eradicated. Till now, I think there's something we can do more. We have to fight cultural, very, very deep inside of our way of life, something that we unconsciously we do. If you Google on and you're looking for a policeman, you will appear, the first picture will appear is a policeman with the costume, with the uniform, very well dressed, with the weapon. If you Google policewoman, one of the first picture you find women very sexy, the policeman very sexy, with a very interesting t-shirt with the weapon put in the strategic area, something that we have to battle with. That's why we deeply want this topic. The commission, the Cultural Change Commission, coordinated by Professor Fabiana Giacomotti, analyzed the discriminatory social norms, gender stereotypes, and unconscious, what I told before, cognitive bias that produce a distortion of reality in all contexts, which reinforce and sustain existing gender inequalities. The Commission specifically focused on the lack of representation of women in our history. A systematic erasure which promotes that certain space do not correspond to women because it is believed that they have never been occupied by them. If you look in a book of an 11 years old student, you will see all the women, they are represented, they are killers or wife of someone. The project Women Missing in School Books was then implemented with the objective of making women visible, addressing structural inequalities and stereotypes from kindergarten to secondary education. We have to start with children. Other solutions that were discussed included formulating plans to tackle gender stereotypes at the national and international level, supporting organizations addressing this issue, and allocating funds for policy implementation. The project of women who are missing school books will be relaunched by the Commission in a new guise. We will let you know shortly. For a sort of reason, we had not the possibility to follow this wonderful project in the best way, but we will start again because we think that is a project that could be realized in all the countries, because try to see in a book of in your country, in a student of 11 years old, you will be surprised. Anyway, I think we are late enough. So thank you, Gianna. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, now I'll give the floor it's my pleasure to introduce Women20 Indonesia. Please, Uli Silalai, Chair of W20 Indonesia. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you,
We will
Gianna.
share the video at the end of the webinar, okay?
Okay, thank you, Gianna. Okay, hi, Happy New Year. Greetings to all ladies and W20 sisters. And please, my presentation. Okay. Yeah, first and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to W20 Italy for the opportunity given to W20 Indonesia to deliver a little bit of introduction towards our presidency in 2020. Of course, you already know my name is Uli Silalai, and then along with me is Dian Siswarini, is our co-chair of W20 Indonesia also. And we are happy and honored to be here and to lead the W20 presidency this year. We also would like to thank you for everyone who attend the W20 kickoff on the last December. Please, next slide. Yeah. As previously mentioned, and will continue to be emphasized that in the next year, we have 4 priority issues. Number 1 is promoting equality, safety, and welfare by eradicating discrimination that impairs women participation in the economy. And number 2, achieving economic inclusion by supporting MSMEs owned and managed by women. And then, of course, number 3 is addressing vulnerabilities to increase resilience, focusing on women with disability and rural women. And number 4 is gender equitable health responses. And we understand that discrimination is a multidimensional problem. It involves several dimensions. We suggest the notion of discrimination in the world of work to be considered legally to address the void and gaps. Unfortunately, the complexity of it has deepened due to COVID-19 pandemic. By recognizing the complexity, we feel that multi-sectoral approach is important. Next slide, please. Yeah. Hence, why we emphasize the necessity to work together to achieve a common goal. This is known as a local wisdom from Indonesia called gotong royong. All parties from W20 members, G20 actors, from engagement groups to the leaders, and including all citizens from the world, need to show their actions. We symbolize their approach by holding W20 side events throughout Indonesia islands, like in Sulawesi, in Likupang, in Java, in Batu, in Papua, we have in Manokwari, and in Kalimantan, we call this in city Banjarmasin, and of course, the summit in Lake Toba, and of course in Bali. Next slide, please. Here, the timeline of W20 Indonesia moving forward. We separate the event quarterly. As shown, the closest event would be a meeting between Troika and all W20 countries, will be in this end of January. And our first side event in February, then the second one in March. The summit will be held on 19 to 21st July 2022. And in this, in Lake Toba, Sumatra, and one of the session that we have going to be a casual session with meeting on the cruise. And for your information, the government of Indonesia has declared no quarantine for all G20 delegates with tight health protocol. And the closing presidency, there will be the G20 ministerial meeting on women empowerment in August. And the last international culture event in October, it will be in Bali. Next slide, please. Here are the topic drafts for the side event. We would humble ask for your support to be involved as research persons to ensure the success of W20 in 2022. For the side event, the first side event will be the theme is, this is only a draft, the freedom from discrimination, historical journey from Japan to Indonesia. And for the side event 2 is webinar and training hybrid women-owned MSMEs. This is the key to inclusive growth. And the side event 3, parallel session, addressing vulnerability to build resilience, rural women and women with disability. And the side event 4, expert group meeting. This is roundtable, promoting gender equitable health response to recover together. Next slide. Ending to that, we also will participate in the 66th Commission on the Status of Women by holding several virtual side events to increase awareness of W20 in international scale. Here, the proposed topics to the CSW committee, like Virginia already mentioned, this is will be held on the event 2 in the CSW in the gender responsive procurement. And for the event 1, we have the 3 events in 66 CSW in UN. And then the first event is MSMEs and financial inclusion. And then the third is rural women and climate change. So I would like to close my session to say we are looking forward to collaboration with all W20 countries in the next couple of weeks. So thank you and gracias.
Okay, thank you, Uli. And we arrive at the conclusion of the webinar with Linda Laura Sabadini, Chair of Women20 Italy 2021, our fantastic chair that has been working very hard to push this recommendation, Leaders Declaration and Roadmap. Let's listen to her final comment on G20 Leaders Declaration and the area where we should push the Indonesian W20 team toward the next communique. Linda Laura Sabadini, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all. I think we can all be satisfied, very satisfied, as many of our recommendations have been taken on board on new and emerging issues by the G20 leaders. And we have achieved an important result due to our ability to work together and share every step of our communique. And we have to consider the points of the G20 Leaders Declaration and of the roadmap, which is attached to the declaration, but which is also explicitly referred to in Article 33, with this very explicit word, we commit to implement. It's important, this commit to implement the G20 roadmap towards and behind the Brisbane goal. This means that for the first time, the space dedicated to gender equality is really large. We must be proud of it. Our continuous work of interaction has yielded important results, not only in the article of the declaration, but with 7 pages of the G20 roadmap. The G20 declaration reaffirms the commitment to gender equality and emphasize the pivotal role of women's and girls' empowerment and leadership at all levels for inclusive and sustainable development. This is our request. G20 leaders commit to put women and girls who have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic at the core of the effort to build forward better. It is an important statement that takes women's empowerment and gender equality as a strategic and cross-sectional objective, and that underlines that women are the most affected by the crisis and are at the center of the action of G20. And the declaration explicitly summarizes the central objective of the Women20 communique: from STEM to gender stereotypes to female entrepreneurship and leadership to labor to the elimination of gender violence to the development of social, health, care and educational services. And we have to consider another very important point. It refers to the objective of Brisbane that we criticized due to the fact that it refers to the reduction of the gender gap in the active population that contains both employed and unemployed people and not to female employment. G20 maintains Brisbane's goal, but the declaration takes into consideration a wider list of auxiliary indicators where the female employment rate and quality of work indicators as requested by us has been included and will be monitored every year. And this is a very important result. And the call to work with the civil society on gender equality is an implicit recognition of the importance of our contribution, and we must be proud of it. The first G20 conference on women's empowerment was organized, we know, in Santa Margherita Ligure under the Italian presidency, and it's very important, the result, that the leaders have decided that it should take place every year. This was also one of our requests during the Women20 Summit in July, which will allow the action of the civil society action to be less isolated. And the Article 3 on the global economy makes the Article 3 on the global economy makes explicit reference to the use of all possible tools without time limits to address the negative consequences of the pandemic on women. And we underline this need in our communique with the analysis of the three kinds of crisis and the focus on the need to quickly resolve the most serious situation of women. The reference to women's health was called for by us with great force. It is important for the need for action against violence against women to be highlighted together with the reactivation of all health services, including those of sexual and reproductive health as requested by us, and special attention to the needs of women. It is a pity that the need for the development of gender medicine has not been accepted. We will have to articulate it better for the future, perhaps with
Mereka udah setuju loh jam tanggal 18 loh, Dan.
Please, what's happened? And I think the reference to the Agenda 2030 and to the empowerment of women, in particular in the field of urban planning, respond to the explicit reference to this aspect in our communique. It's very important, the approach adopted by G20 on labor through the roadmap. I I think the discussion was very, very interesting in the detail of all aspects. And I think we can consider very satisfied. First, we have achieved many results, in particular for the topic labor, but not only for the topic labor. We need to ask ourselves, how was it possible? And the first answer is, it was possible because we have discussed a lot and acted together. It was possible because we worked from the beginning with the formal groups of the G20. And this is very important for Indonesian sisters too. We don't have to intervene on governments. In the end, the communiqué must be defined very soon in order to be able to discuss it with governments. Discuss. Don't discuss once. Try again if there is no agreement with other, using with other words. Insist. Don't stop until the last. Now we face an important challenge. And the challenge is we have to push for all the objectives that we have not achieved with Italian presidency. And we have to push for all the other objectives that Indonesian presidency of Women20 propose. And I think we have some topics, some aspects we defined and to underline. The first is gender procurement. The second is gender impact evaluation of policies. The third, gender medicine. Fourth, a more detailed approach to gender stereotypes and investment in digital inclusion. It's very important that Indonesian presidency will put this aspect inside our communiqué and inside their strategical strategical objectives. Now it's time for new challenges. Uli showed the strategical aspect of Indonesian presidency. We can start our new adventure, and thank you to all. We were all strong and powerful for our contents. The consciousness of it will make us stronger. All the best to Uli, to Indonesian presidency, and see you very fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much. Yes, we are ready to support you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda Laura. With these final comments, we close the webinar, and I apologize if we took more time than planned to assess the recommendations. I hope today we contributed to the dissemination of the work done by W20 Engagement Group during the last year, 2021, and give some hint for future work of W2 Indonesia. Thank you, every one of your working group, for your support and collaboration. Thank you, the audience who have participated with us in this webinar. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and see you at the next event with W20 Indonesia 2022. So please, if possible, share the slide, the video of Indonesia, Uli. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.